everyone, my name is Eliza Osambo, and for today's lesson, we will be discussing the site of the first Mass in the Philippines. The site of the first Mass in the Philippines was happened on March 31, 1521, on Eastern Sunday, which is ordered by Ferdinand Magellan, and it was conducted by Father Pedro de Valderrama, and located at Limasawa at southern Leyte, Philippines. But there are arguments that says that the site of the first Mass was happened in Butuan. Let's talk about the argument between Masao, that is located in Butuan, and Limasaw, which is located in southern Leyte. Site of the first Mass in the Philippines, Masao in Butuan or Limasawa at southern Leyte. According to Figapita, the site of the first Mass was on the island of Mazawa or Limasawa today, on Easter Sunday on 31st of March 1521. Two native chieftains were in attendance, which is Raha of Mazawa and Raha of Butuan. After the Mass, a wooden cross was planted on the hill upon its summit. The Butuan tradition. So, Butuan claim rests upon a tradition that was almost anonymous and unbroken for 3 centuries, namely the 17th, 18th, and 19th century. So, they really claim that the site of the first Mass was happened in their place. So, the date given in the first Mass was April 8, 1521. A monument was erected in 1872 as a strengthen the tradition. To the immortal Magellan, the people of Butuan were their parish priest and the Spaniard resident therein. To commemorate his arrival and the celebration of the first Mass on this site on the 8th of April 1521. Erected in 1872 under the district governor Jose Carvalho. The people in Butuan believed that the first Mass was happened on April 8, 1521, but later on they found out on Figapita's chronicle that the first site of the Mass was happened on March 31, 1521. Let's proceed to the 3 centuries, and let's start with the 17th century. So, these people are the people who search about the first Mass. According to Father Francisco Colin S.J. or Society of Jesus, Labor Evangelica, on Easter Day, in the territory of Butuan, the first Mass ever offered in these parts was celebrated and a cross was planted. And according to Father Francisco Combes, S.J., Historia de Mindanao Waiholo, Magellan landed at Butuan and there planted the cross in a solemn ceremony in comparison of both accounts, Colin and Combes. These are the primary sources that they use that they believe that the first Mass was happened in Butuan. On 18th century, one passage in Colan which seems to have been misunderstood and disowned some later writers. Fray Juan de la Concepcion, one of the major historians who made the error related to Colan. On 19th century, Fray Joaquin Martinez de Zuniega, Historia de Filipinas, the Butuan tradition was taken for granted since misstatements in the passage are numerous if compared to the account of Figapita. Tip of opinion from Masao to Limasawa. So this is the introduction to Limasawa. So Emma Blair and James Alexander Robertson. According to them, Father Pablo Pastels, S.J., the discovery of Figapita's account and Albus logbook are the reasons of the shift of opinion. And also, Trinidad Pardo de Tavera and Jaime de Vera also did the research about the shift of opinion from Masao to Limasawa. This is the evidence of Albus logbook by Figapita. These are the evidence that according to Pigapita, the site of the first mass was happened in Limasawa in southern Leyte, Philippines. A. Pigapita's testimony regarding the route. B. The evidence of Pigapita's map. C. The two native kings. D. The 7 days of Mazawa. And lastly, an argument from omission. Ferdinand Magellan anchored off the eastern shore of a small island called Mazawa. There they stayed a week, during which on Easter Sunday they celebrated the Mass and planted a cross on the summit of the highest hill. The island of Mazawa lies at a latitude of 9 2/3 degrees north. It is located on the south of Leyte, and its latitude corresponds to the position and latitude of the island of Limasawa, whose southern top lies at 9 degrees and 54 minutes north. From the island of Mazawa, the expedition sailed northwestwards through the Canigao Channel between Bohol and Leyte, then northwards parallel to the eastern coast of this latter island. Then they sailed westwards to the Camotes group and from there southwestwards to Cebu. No point in that itinerary did the expedition of Magellan go to Butuan. The survivors of the expedition did go to Mindanao later, but after Magellan's death. Pilots of Legazpi expedition understood that Mazawa was an island near Leyte and Panaon, while Butuan was on the island of Mindanao. The two were different places and in no wise identical. Maybe from its name, Masao to Limasawa, maybe this is the reason why there was a mistake in distinguishing the exact place and where the first Philippine mass takes place. The most complete and reliable account of the Magellan expedition into Philippine shores in 1521 is that of Antonio Pigapita, which is deemed as the only credible primary source of reports on the celebration of the first Christian Mass on Philippine soil. James Robertson's English translation of the original Italian manuscript of Pigapita's account is most reliable for being faithful to the original text as duly certified by the University of the Philippines Department of European Languages. Pigapita's Mazawa, the site of the first Christian Mass held on Philippine soil, is an island lying off the southwestern tip of Leyte.
What did happen in Cavite Mutiny? In 1872, a historic year of two events. First, the Cavite Mutiny, a major factor in the awakening of nationalism among the Filipinos. What is mutiny? A rebellion against authority comes from an old verb mutin, which means revolt. Cavite Mutiny, uprising of military personnel of Fort San Felipe, the Spanish arsenal in Cavite, Philippines on January 20, 1872. Around 200 soldiers and laborers rose up in the belief that it would elevate to a national uprising. The mutiny was unsuccessful and government soldiers executed many of the participants. 2. The martyrdom of the three priests. The Gumburza, collective name of three martyred priests tagged as mastermind of the Cavite Mutiny. Gumburza. They were prominent Filipino priests charged with treason and sedition. The Spanish clearly connected the priests to the community as part of conspiracy to stifle the movement of secular priests who desired to have their own parishes instead of being assistant to the regular friars. Father Mariano Gomez, an old man in his mind, 70, Chinese Filipino, born in Cavite. He held the most senior position on the three Archbishop Vicar in Cavite. He was truly nationalistic and accepted the death penalty calmly, as though it were his finance for being pro-Filipinos. Father Jose Burgos, Spanish descent, born in the Philippines, he was a parish priest of the Manila Cathedral and had been known to be close to the liberal Governor General de la Torre. He was 35 years old at the time and was active and spokesperson in advocating the Filipinization of the clergy. Father Jacinto Zamora, a 37 years old, was also Spanish. Born in the Philippines, he was the parish priest of Marikina and was known to be unfriendly to and would not countenance any arrogance or authoritative behavior from Spaniards coming from Spain. Spanish account of the Cavite Mutiny. Jose Montero y Vidal, a Spanish historian, his account centered on how the event was an attempt in overthrowing the Spanish government in the Philippines. His account on mutiny was criticized as woefully biased. Governor Rafael Escudero implicated the native clergy who were active in a movement towards secularization of parishes. In a biased report, he highlighted the attempt to overthrow the Spanish government in the Philippines to install a new hari in the persons of Father Burgos and Zamora. According to Escudero, native clergy attracted supporters by giving them charismatic assurance that their fight would not fail because they had good support, aside from promises of lofty rewards such as employment, wealth, and ranks in the army.
The Cavite Mutiny of 1872 has two extant versions coming from the two opposing camps, namely Spanish version and Filipino version. The Spanish version of Cavite Mutiny of 1872 is narrated by Jose Montero y Vidal's account anchored in the thesis that the fateful event of the 20th of January 1872 happens due to the concerted effort of disgruntled native soldiers and laborers of Cavite Arsenal who will fully revolted to overthrow the Spanish, and those guilty of rebellion and sedition. By such acts, the execution of prominent critics of the Spaniards and friars by the Spanish officials are justified. And the sentence of life imprisonment and deportation of some natives critical of their incongruous rule is unquestionably legit, if not morally right. The account of Jose Montero y Vidal was even made credible possible by no less than Rafael de Escudero, the Governor-General of the time when the revolt of 1872 happened. Major investigators including Sergeant Lamadrid were killed in the skirmish, while the Gomborza were tried by a court-martial and were sentenced to die by strangulation. Patriots like Joaquin Pardo de Travera, Antonio Maria Regidor, Jose Anpayo Basa, and other abogadillos were suspended by the Audiencia or High Court from the practice of law, arrested and were sentenced with life imprisonment at the Marianas Island. On 17 February 1872, in an attempt of the Spanish government and Philocracia to instill fear among the Filipinos so that they may never commit such daring act, the Gomborza were executed. This event was tragic but served as one of the moving forces that shaped Filipino nationalism. Dr. Trinidad Hermenegildo Pardo de Tavera, a Filipino scholar and researcher, wrote the Filipino version of the bloody incident in Cavite. For him, the so-called Cavite Mutiny is a mere incident of mutiny orchestrated by native soldiers and laborers who reacted to harsh policy of the new Governor-General, Rafael de Escudero, who whimsically terminated the old-time privileges such as exempting them from paying annual tribute and from rendering forced labor or polo. As counted, it is made clear that the mutiny is blown up by the Spanish officials and friars into a revolt as a way for Filipinos to gain independence from the Spanish monarchy. The road to independence was rough and tough to travel. Many patriots named and unnamed shed their bloods to attain reforms and achieve independence. 12 June 1898 may be a glorious event for us, but we should not forget that before we came across the victory, our forefathers suffered enough. As we enjoy our freedom, may we be more historically aware of our past to have a better future ahead of us. And just like what Elias said in lawin, may we not forget those who we feel during the night.
Hi everyone, my name is Hernan Odevera. This day we are going to discuss cry about first, what is the cry of pugad lawin? The cry of pugad lawin in Filipino, sigaw ng pugad lawin. In Spanish, grito di pugad lawin was the beginning of the Philippine Revolution against Spanish Empire. The cry could also refer to the tearing up community tax certificates. How did the cry of pugad lawin started? After the discovering of the Katipunan, Spanish authorities made several arrests to identify their member. This led to an event called the Cry of Pugad Lawin. Revolutionaries took part in mass tearing of cedulas, community tax certificates, symbolizing their fights against Spanish. Bonifacio is the founder of Pugad Lawin. They abandoned the organization and concentrated their efforts on the Katipunan to bring about a revolution with the use of violence and arms. The first cry of revolution happened in Balintawak at the house of Apolonio Samson on August 26, 1996. What is the symbolizes of the cry of Pugad Lawin? Exact 118 years today since Katipunero's story, their cedulas, tax certificates to give Spanish rulers in what is now commonly referred to as the cry of Pugad Lawin. A descendant of Dr. Peo Valenzuela laments that Filipinos lack of sense of history. Architect Arturo Valenzuela Jr., age of 82, is the grandson of Peo, one of the leader of the kataas-taasan, kagalang-galangan na katipunan ng mga anak ng bayan o tinatawag nating KKK. It simplify Katipunan. The patriot, who was once a close friend of Andres Bonifacio, participated in that historic event on August 23, 1896, which sparked the Philippine Revolution against Spain. The northern Mindanao Manila city, that is home of Arturo, was named after his grandfather, lost sense of history. Arturo's sentiments goes along with the facts of some Filipino, according to him, do not appreciate the past. For Filipino who have a frame grasp of history, the cry of Pugad Lawin means a lot. Cry of Balintawak or Pugad Lawin. It is believed that the cry took place in Balintawak, but others would say it's really happened in Pugad Lawin. There are different versions to consider is knowing the real date and place of the cry. There includes Pio Valenzuela's Santiago Alvarez and Gregoria de Jesus version. Dr. Pio Valenzuela wrote in his Memoir of Revolution without consulting the written documents of the Philippine Revolution. He claimed that the cry took place of Pugad Lawin on August 23, 1896 rather than August 26, 1896. Santiago Alvarez, the cry of Bahay Turo on August 24, 1896. The cry was written by a relatives of Gregoria de Jesus who happened to be a wife of Andres Bonifacio. Unlike the author of the first version mentioned, Valenzuela, Santiago Alvarez is not eyewitness of the event. As a result, this version of him is not of equal value as compared with the other version. Gregoria de Jesus' version of the first cry on August 25, 1896. Lakambini of the Katipunan, wife of Andres Bonifacio, Gregoria de Jesus after the revolution in 1896.